It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello, and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name's Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we are discussing Taiwan Travelogue by Yang Shuangzi, translated by Lin King. Although, depending on what level of fiction that you want to go on, this is actually Taiwan Travelogue by Aoyama Chizuko, translated by Wang Qianho, remixed and republished by Yang Shuangzi, and then translated again by Lin King.
Yes.
Are there wizards in this book?
No, but, there's imperialism. I feel like the themes of this book end up being very much in conversation with the Wizlish genre, despite the fact that this isn't really speculative fiction.
No, this is in fact not at all speculative fiction, but we can do what we want.
We can do what we want, and the thing is...
This is a lesbian discovering that she is a wizard.
Yes. And I mean...
Which is close enough.
Right. Well, and and the thing is that, there's a lot of things that the book does that end up reading, I feel like if you like speculative fiction, if you like sort of some of the framing techniques that get used in speculative fiction, then you'll enjoy this.
Yes, there is certainly enough threads to pick at here. Assuming that you read the print edition, I must caution the reader against the audiobook, which not only does not include the footnotes, but does not include any of the forewords or afterwards.
What? But that's part of the point of the book. They took out that's fake paratextual materials that are actually part of the main text.
Correct. However,
wow, well that's appalling. Okay. Huge failure on the audiobook part. What the fuck?
Correct. I started with the audiobook and switched over to the text, and I'm very glad that I did. I had a feeling that I might be missing something about halfway through, and I went back and checked, and I was like, oh, I see.
Oh no. All right.
So that is your first caution on that front.
So are there lesbians?
I believe that even though we are not at a period in our hero's lifetime or in the history of the world where our main character would use the word lesbian for herself, she is a lesbian. Yes.
Yes. And in fact, the author, the actual author, Yang Shuangzi, is known for writing lesbian literature. So.
Yes. No. This is a lesbian book. About a lesbian character, and but it is part of the nature of the world that they live in that cannot be openly acknowledged for a number of reasons. Part of which is that our lesbian is as dense as two short planks of cedar.
Yes.
Why should you read this book?
We haven't done the plot summary yet.
Oh, I was so excited to get to the book that I forgot about the plot summary. You're right. Yeah, would you like to give us the plot summary then?
Sure. So Aoyama Chizuko is a Japanese novelist who is doing a sort of, and Japanese novelist and travel writer who's doing a sort of combination press junket travel writing vacation in Taiwan, in Japanese colonial Taiwan, where she eats a ton of delicious food, falls in love with her Taiwanese Japanese interpreter, and screws up all of her relationships.
Yeah, no, I don't think that you really need to get any further into it than that. And this is one of those books where, as far as the plot goes, that's pretty much it. The meat of it is all in the nuance and the context.
Yes. And also, this book is masquerading as the new Han Chinese Mandarin Chinese edition of the original Japanese novel that was based on a series of Japanese travel writing articles, but actually it was written, it was first written and published in Taiwan by a Taiwanese author.
Although the first edition that was published and released in Taiwan claimed to be on the cover by a Japanese author from the 30s.
Yes, and then there was a bunch of complaints about this. And, because some people just can't handle, a real commitment to a narrative framing device.
I think that it's fun that pretending to be Japanese uh, for literary reasons is a thing that transcends cultures.
Yes, though, as we can get into, the power dynamics are very different when it's a Taiwanese woman pretending versus like a random white guy.
Then a bunch of American white poet dudes pretending to be Iraqi Yasasada. Yes.
So why should you read this book?
It's very, very good. I mean, that's just like your basic start. It's literature. It's really fun to unpack the themes as you go. It is. This is, of course, a why you should and why you shouldn't read it, but it will make you hungry.
Oh,
It'll make you hungry, and then it'll make you feel bad about making you hungry. So, one side or the other there, as far as why you should read it or
I
not.
refuse to feel bad about feeling hungry reading a book about Taiwanese food.
Indeed. Well, we should come back to that theme because it's. I think that's one of the major things that the book is interested in.
Yes.
Is whether you should feel bad about that. But it's one of those books where it is a sort of masquerading as a light romantic tragedy, but because it is extremely located in the place and time that it is located in, it is also suffused with all of this historical context. One of the reasons why you might not read it is if you are not aware of any of this historical context. The footnotes are doing a good job, but
But it really probably would help to, if nothing else, read the Wikipedia pages. I mean, yes, because there's so many layers going on of history and of power dynamics and of colonialism, and some of which are very overt and are in fact explained using small words to our very dense narrator, and some are sufficiently subtle that I'm not 100% sure whether or not they're intentional or coincidental. So
and some are like considered in this context to be so obvious that you shouldn't need to be told, like the fact that World War II is about to happen. The book never says that,
right.
but if you don't know that, then you're going to miss a huge amount of the sense of overwhelming dread that
Yes.
hangs over this pleasant idyll
Yes.
that this woman is experiencing.
I mean, the thing is that, like, to some degree, the Pacific War is already happening.
Yes.
World War II is perhaps not, but the Pacific War is already happening. This is why there's all the comments about. Well, we can get into that. I mean, other reasons. The translation, I think, is quite good. It's very thoughtful and engaging. The translator does a great job of, like, the translator clearly is really into this like multi-layered narrative framing device and has done a really great job of integrating the English translation footnotes into the footnotes that are added, as part of the framing device. I thought that was handled really well.
If you're like a translation nerd, a localization nerd, you should read this because it's fantastic as an example of that.
This is like a masterclass in like how to do a thoughtful, engaging translation that really speaking as somebody who like professionally works with translators, one of the hardest things to do with something like this is strike a good balance between the right amount of guidance and notes and explaining things. And I think that the translator and editor and publisher all just did a fantastic job, like striking exactly the right balance.
I am just in love with the fact that the English prose in this book reads like it has been translated from the Japanese, even though it has been translated from the Mandarin. And like I have no way of knowing whether that's also true of the original text, whether the original Mandarin text would feel to a Mandarin reader as if it was translated from the Japanese. But the English in this is like, so and such and such and such, are you not? It's like Janaika is in like
Yes.
in the way that these characters talk. In other words, everyone in this book talks like Toby Fox. As to how a native English speaker Toby Fox ended up sounding like that, that's just the magic of cultural exchange at work.
So I do think that some of this, I mean, my guess, I've not read the original Chinese, I having read a bunch of Taiwanese editions of manga, like it feels a little bit like reading a. It also feels like reading, a Mandarin translation of Japanese. Um, so my guess is that that's present in the original. Taiwan, there's a lot of Taiwan, because as we will get into, there's a lot more, Japanese cultural influence over Taiwan. One of the interesting things about even Taiwanese Mandarin is that there's occasionally little like Japanese-esque features that mainland Mandarin has less of.
Mm. Fascinating. And again, these are the sort of pleasures that if you don't have the context will not be as apparent. Right.
Yes.
But there are a lot of them if you do have the context.
I think that this book can stand on its own even without that. But if you have any interest in like colonial Japan or any interest in Taiwan or really in, like the modern history of the Sinosphere, again, absolutely recommended. Or just if you like food writing.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about it. It's like, is this a successful novel without any of the not actually paratextual material in it? Like if you're just, cluelessly listening to the audiobook, and yes, I think it is, even without any of the footnoting. And so, yeah, no, we're building from a very solid foundation, but the more that the more that you're going to get out of it, I think.
Yeah. So, content warnings?
Is there any why shouldn't you read it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've talked about how it's useful to have the extra context. I don't know. I mean, I can't really think of any reason why you shouldn't. I mean, I guess if you only read speculative fiction, but if that's the case, honestly, this is a good opportunity to branch out a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Besides the whole "it will make you hungry" bit,
it will make you hungry and a little sad.
And a little sad. Yeah. Content warnings, as you said, not much like on screen. Cringe. You may cringe.
Yeah.
At some of the things that Aoyami Sensei does and thinks. But apart from that, every part of the point of this is that all of the brutality is happening where Aoyama Sensei can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the content warnings are more applicable. The more you know about the historical context, the more potential content warnings there are. But
yeah, but no, it's all very much at a remove.
Yeah.
So, having said that,
let's get into it.
You ask, where are we going now? It's off to Spoiler Zone, where we talk about this book we liked for a strikingly long time. So where even to begin here?
So okay, let's start with talking about the food and whether or not, how bad are you supposed to feel about really enjoying the food writing?
Well, I mean, I was being a little glib earlier. I don't
Yes.
think this book wants you, the reader, to feel bad. I mean, obviously, because it was written for a Taiwanese audience in the first place.
Right.
But,
well, and okay, so I have to say that I've gone to quite a few talks by like Taiwanese, scholars and politicians and activists aimed at Western audiences, and they always open with a plug for Taiwanese food.
yes. I mean, but this book invites you to consider that as part of an ongoing performance.
Right, exactly. So, but the thing is that I think that I think you're supposed to feel hungry, and you're not supposed to feel bad about feeling hungry. But I think you are supposed to go, okay, what does it mean that everybody what does it mean to take this much pride in Taiwanese food? Why?
Yeah. What does it mean to take? I mean, here are the questions that it brings up for me. A, what does it mean to take so much pride in your snacks and in your food generally? B, what does the amount of labor that goes into making this food mean?
Yeah.
Particularly, also what does it mean for a dish, an incredibly labor-intensive, like desperation poverty dish, to be a delicacy?
Mm-hmm.
C, is Taiwan positioning itself as a nation of food, as a nation of snack, part of the same performance that Chizuru Qianho is doing throughout this entire narrative. Chizuko is the first name of Aoyama Sensei, the Japanese travel writer. Chizuru is the Japanese rendering of the first name of Wang Qianho, the Taiwanese translator. Apologies for any confusion this might cause. Instantly, I want to suggest, are you the travel writer or the translator as a sort of feudal lord handmaiden analog for the lexicographically inclined? Oh, that guitar is not quite in tune. The plot twist, if there is one, which you figure out way before Chizuko does, our translator slash personal assistant slash personal chef in this book has all of these extraordinary skills because she was raised to be a geisha, or the Taiwanese equivalent of a geisha, in a club called Amber, and called Amber in Japanese.
Yes.
Which is like the business of simulating timelessness is extremely important here. It's very central because oh my god, this is so good. Can I just say that? Like, our hero goes to Taiwan to basically do a gap year before her actual life has to start, because she's
has to restart. I mean, she's a successful novelist already, and she's kind of been coasting along on that and on her, short form writing. But it's not. No, the thing is, she's not just going to take a gap year. She's going partly as a sort of because she's in this, militarizing, increasingly militaristic, authoritarian, expansive empire, and she's under all of this pressure to go travel to, the edges of the colonial empire. And Taiwan is the compromise, because Taiwan is, Japanese enough that it's not like being actively invaded and colonized in quite the same way. Taiwan did get, for all that, you see some of the many ways, and for all that, honestly, this book downplays many of the things that Japan did in Taiwan. Taiwan did get the best deal of any of the Japanese colonies. But she can go to Taiwan without feeling like she's, part of the imperial vanguard, because Taiwan is already Japan at this point. It's just second-tier Japan. But, she's doing this partly to get away from the constant, not just, the constant pressure of, oh, grow up, get married, but also the constant pressure of, why are you not writing imperial propaganda?
Yeah, and this book is positing that those two things are the same, or at least very similar. Her naivete is present in her, ability to ignore what her status is when she is in Taiwan, but it's also present in her feminism. Mm-hmm. It's present in the idea that she has that you can simply refuse to participate in society.
Yes, though I do think that her naivete is, to a small degree, this cultivated performance that she's doing, because being a spacey, I don't care about politics, a very, feminine travel writer, is a way that she's able to, she's using it very self-consciously as a dodge to get out of being completely co-opted by the imperial machine.
Yes.
And thus she doesn't and because she's doing this consciously, and she knows that this is a thing she's doing, she doesn't realize the degrees to which she's already been so completely co-opted.
Which means that this becomes another story about kinds of escapism. Yes. The club, which we never see, where Chizuru was brought up, the Kohaku Club, the Amber Club, is the metaphor there, which the author helpfully points out in the afterword that she actually attributes to herself at the end, is that Chizuko comes to Taiwan and announces to Chizuru that her like mission there is to, oh well, I'm just going to use my writing to save like a capsule of this feeling before it's ruined.
Right.
To which Chizuru goes, thanks.
Yeah. Oh boy, you're trying to preserve us in amber.
Yes, exactly.
Which, again, this works really well in the context of actually, Japan is the one that's going to get going to get
Going
so
to be
much
remade beyond recognition.
Right, exactly. And Taiwan, I mean, obviously Taiwan does not get captured in amber, but weirdly, this kind of moment in Taiwan where you've still got, the strong Japanese influence, but there's still both sort of, but there's still Taiwanese culture. It doesn't get like completely preserved, but, Taiwan has maintained with each wave of colonialism, at least some of the cultural elements of what came before it. You can still find people who speak a little bit of Atayal in the mountains. There are still old people, a vanishing amount, but there's still a few old people who speak better Japanese than they speak Mandarin. There's still tons of Taiwanese and Hakka being spoken. And similarly for food and for other cultural markers. Because there's two more waves of colonialism to come in Taiwan. There's the post-Chinese Civil War mainland invasion, followed by becoming a U.S. client state.
Yes, but I think that part of to circle back to whether you should feel bad about wanting to eat the food, which is the the thing that we started this thread about. I think this book is positing that one of the reasons that has survived, and one of the reasons, and it is a conscious method to present Taiwan as this time capsule, as this vacation, as this as this place where that is concentrated on pleasure and will welcome you regardless of which imperial force you happen to be part of, and give you this experience, is part of what has allowed it to stay that way.
I think that's part of it, but I actually think again, because this is initially written for by a Taiwanese person for a Taiwanese Chinese reading audience, I think this is actually also just positing that food is a way of preserving culture. And that part of the Taiwanese enthusiasm for food, the Taiwanese sort of national boosterism of Taiwanese food, is part of a conscious way of creating a Taiwanese identity, which has been a real project over the last 20 years, really more, but sort of as the mainland China has gotten more and more powerful and has really been putting more and more effort behind erasing the concept of a separate Taiwan, there's been, the cultural shift has focused in Taiwan from, well, we're the Republic of China, to, no, Taiwan is its own unique thing. And I think that to some degree, part of this book is showing you the ways in which Taiwan is its own unique thing. That is, it is a product of layers of colonialism, but what this has created is, in fact, this, singular culture that, contains multitudes and has its own separate identity, and that there has been some continuity, that this has sort of created a continuity across all these different layers of colonialism. And I think that, it's positing that food is a major part of this building and creating a cultural identity. But I think that actually this is sort of an ongoing form of resistance.
I mean, the book does definitely demonstrate that that making this food and continuing this culture and presenting this both to itself and to the world is requires an enormous amount of effort, right?
Yes.
It's some of these dishes that we are presented with require like military amounts of coordination and labor, and some of them are just like this a product of like the boundless human ingenuity of and desperation of living on absolutely nothing. And so there is like, I suppose that this is a pretty natural metaphor, but like the struggle for survival being in the production of food uh, ramifies out to such an extent, when we're talking about like who is serving and who is getting served.
Yeah. But, the thing is that for all that this is a book about Japanese colonialism, I think we really can't set aside the current mainland efforts to erase Taiwan. I mean, because I was talking about how all of these talks, I go to open often with Taiwan. Well, we have such good food. I don't know if you knew this, but I was looking at the notes I took for a talk on the marriage equality fight in Taiwan and how it opened up with a plug for Taiwanese food and for bubble tea, which was in fact invented in Taiwan. And you go, oh, well, isn't that cute? We're talking about marriage equality. Let's also mention bubble tea. But, and that it was invented in Taiwan. But then, you think about how there was this online concerted push by Taiwanese Hong Kongers and Thai people to fight against the Chinese government funded online armies. And, they called themselves the Milk Tea Alliance, which was boba, Thai iced tea, and Hong Kong milk tea. Like, again, I think that this is food as cultural preservation and food as soft power, and also food as colonial resistance in a way that, looks like you're going along and just doing, soft tourism stuff. But it really is a way of maintaining a cultural continuity in the face of empire. And that is inherently, revolutionary.
Interesting. Like I'm not entirely. I mean, I'm absolutely willing to posit that that is true in the world. I'm not sure how much of that is present in the text. Partially just because of how centered in Aoyama's experience the text is, for the most part. Because like a lot of what ends up being sort of the focus of the latter like quarter of the story is Shizuko like struggling with her own appetite or lack of appetite, having sort of discovered the things that she has been like intentionally or unintentionally ignoring or missing throughout the course of the story. But I think that you're absolutely right to draw a direct line between bubble tea and marriage equality in both in the world and in your reading of the text, because oh man, I lost the thread of that sentence.
Man.
That's a shame because it was a good one.
It was. I was really curious where you were going with that.
Well, where I was going with that was about. Oh yes, I do remember where I was going with that. I was going with that to the inexplicable shoujo manga that happens in the middle of the story.
Oh yes, with the schoolgirls.
Yes, because in what is to me an extremely hilarious moment, our Shizuko sort of has to work out what being gay is from first principles by observing these students, essentially, and also incidentally has to work out from first principles with Chizuru's help
who is calling whom a slur and why, very specifically.
Exactly.
between this girl who's Japanese, though raised on Taiwan, and because we do get into the relative power dynamics of being Japanese from the home islands, Japanese but raised in Taiwan, and Taiwanese but raised in Taiwan. Yeah, and this schoolgirl romance between a Taiwanese girl and a Japanese girl.
Yeah, absolutely. And like part of what is going on here is, the same sort of process that has created this extremely rich cuisine, which is, as you said, these layers upon layers of colonial intrusion, is like what we are getting here at the exclusive girls' school between the exceptional islander student who has managed to place into it and the sort of the queen of the school high class Japanese woman, but it is the islander girl who is calling the Japanese girl by the slur.
The slur for Taiwanese people.
The slur for Taiwanese people, and it is, and there is this sort of, extortion manqué thing that they're doing with the bathrooms, and the picture of the Taiwanese girl in Western dress. This is all very, if you'll forgive the expression, like well fermented vintage of Yuri.
Yes.
This is complicated Yuri with these flavor notes that you couldn't get without this underlying situation, if you see what I mean. The book is presenting us this fine complex Yuri as in the same way that these fine complex foods are being presented to Chizuko, and she's learning from it in the same way that she is learning from the food. I think is what I was going for.
Yes. Yes.
But it's part of the point of what is valuable about these multicultural settings, about these frontier settings, these colonial settings, is that they are the hope, right? The hope that is in Aoyama naively, but that we must also choose whether we retain or discard, is that there is a fundamental shared humanity and a strong value in joyfully, openly mixed cultures that exists in the world. And this is not something that is easy to say straight up, particularly as a person who is part of, as Lynn King says in her translator note, a speaker of the ultimate colonial language, English.
Yes.
It's not a thing necessarily for me to aver, wholeheartedly with the shining city on the hill glint in my eyes, that there is something unique and wonderfully human here that is worth preserving and celebrating. That is also the result of these layers upon layers upon layers of colonial rule.
Yeah.
But I think the book is also positing that. I think the book is saying that.
Well, to some degree, Mandarin. This book was written in Mandarin, which is also a very colonial language.
Well, that's the thing. It's at the beginning of this book, Aoyama, says, "Oh, I want to try some of the mountain people's food," and that never happens, because even though Chizuru is as a ethnically Chinese person, is one step into the sort of colonial jawbreaker, she doesn't have access to that. What do you mean by colonial jawbreaker? I'm referring to the layers of colonial penetration that start at the island's perimeter, still haven't suffused the interior, and I'm using a food metaphor. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Something about garum here, I guess. And we don't get to talk to any of those people.
No, because among other things, the Japanese colonial machine was way worse towards the Atayal and other mountain Aboriginal people than it was towards either the Plains indigenous people or the Taiwanese people.
Precisely. So we are still both textually and evaluating this text as a whole, ignoring aspects of the brutality that already existed and that were in fact, perpetrated both by the Japanese and the Qing.
And and for that matter, the Ming, the Zheng Chenggong and the Ming, the last Ming holdouts.
Mm-hmm. It does end up where, if you continue to think about it too hard, you may lose your appetite.
Yes, though note that the thing that makes Aoyama lose her appetite is more her love life than her love life is, or her largely unrequited love for her translator, for Ong Chen-ho, is of course intrinsically linked with this colonialism and these power dynamics, partly because this is the thing that keeps this is half of what keeps ruining their friendship, the other half being that this is her employee and she keeps proposing. Great, now I've forgotten where I was going with that. The oh yeah, but just oh yeah, that basically, well, her appetite gains and losses are somewhat linked to her understanding of the power dynamics. It's also just, I mean, you know, this because nothing in this book is ever doing one thing. And actually, I want to use this to pivot the the things that we learn, the bits and pieces that we learn about Aoyama's life, because we know, and the thing about Aoyama that Ong Chien-ho knows is all from this autobiographical novel that made her name. And
Yes.
and where she keeps going, and Ayama keeps going, oh yes, well, and she keeps getting asked, is this novel part, how much is this novel based on you? And she's like, oh well, novels, and that's fine and cute. And then at one point, Ayama just drops this like horrible bit of childhood trauma where she's basically this abandoned feral child for a year guarding this family shrine and starving to death in the woods. And Wong Chen-ho is sort of staring at her in horror and being like, that wasn't in your novel. And Ayama being like, well, novels, I did say you can't, it is fiction. But that she, like, Ayama links this childhood deprivation of both food and love to why she has this tremendous, ridiculous appetite. And so, it's not just about, colonialism. There's also this emotional hole within her where she didn't get enough love, and she's trying to fill that with food. And when she's happy and in love, or even just excited with her life, she eats a ton, and when she gets depressed, she loses her appetite.
Yeah, and this is like hashtag relatable,
right?
but but B, you are correct in that, like, this is also, I mean, probably primarily, in fact, a romance, a sort of a tragic, sad romance, but a romance nonetheless. And the thing that allows Aoyama, and I'll put in a jingle about this, but everybody has so many different names in this book, and I'm calling Aoyama Chizuko, and
I'm sticking with Aoyama and Ong Chen-ho just because Chizuru and Chizuko, as is pointed out in the book, is really confusing.
Yes, it's just easier for me to pronounce Chizuru and Chizuko, so that's when I'm going there. But
I mean, I'm mostly using the Mandarin pronunciation of Ong Chen-ho's name. Like, I guess I'm not doing like Wang Jianhe, but it's still pretty. I'm definitely going with the colonial Mandarin translation instead of the Taiwanese, because my Taiwanese pronunciation is terrible with like the 4 words that I know.
Exactly. And for better or worse, I pronounce Japanese better than I pronounce any of the other languages here, with possibly also English. Look, I know the evidence doesn't bear this out. I don't pronounce anything because that would require opening my mouth. Just go with it. But so the point is that these two human beings, despite being unable to be honest with each other basically at all, we haven't even mentioned how it's posited that the last part of this book is quote unquote fictionalized and the rest of it is quote unquote memoir, which is an incredible little metatextual detail. And that the person who posits that the final segment of the book, where they actually get to like talk to each other for real, is fictionalized, is a Taiwanese born Japanese person, who is sort of invested in his like scholarly position in the intractability of this problem to a certain extent. But as two human beings, the thing that they have in common is this childhood deprivation, is this lack of love and lack of food when they were children. And they because of their positions in life, they've dealt with this in two very different ways. One of them has become hyper competent, and the other one has become like just an appetite on legs. One has become a feeder, and one has become an eater, essentially.
Yes.
But the locus of the trauma between the two of them is the same, and therefore there is this mutual recognition, which is the seed of the actual love which exists here. And I think that like this is another part of the what can be communicated across these barriers sort of thing, because there is nothing that protects any human being from being an abused child at one point, no matter how rich or how poor or from what circumstances they are, because one thing that rich and poor parents have in common is that they can be abusive in elaborate or ways out of necessity because they're bad, et cetera, et cetera. And the again, in the sort of the more romantic with a capital R parts of this book are reaching for that common humanity. And in this case, that common humanity is in this void that needs to be filled. And I think that that is also echoed in the Amber theme, because one of the things that people keep saying is I would like time to stop,
Yeah.
In literary allusions, or more plainly, is I need to stop getting older. I need to stop. I need the consequences of my choices to stop marching closer to me like a Japanese imperial army.
Right.
I need to remain here because I didn't get enough of being a child when I was a child.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's true that this is also, I mean, part of how she gets to be a child, it is this colonialism allows you to be a child longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone has to baby her.
This is 100% the truth. And there is no reconciling the feeling of emotional rightness that comes from being a person who was, had an abusive or emotionally stunted childhood, receiving that kind of attention, and the fact of it being as a result of this massive inequality. She can't reconcile how good it feels to be taken care of with the reality of what it is that she's being taken care of means, which is part of why for such a long time in this book she's just accepting the fact that this person is basically being her maidservant, as being, this person is incredibly kind.
Yeah.
Because that is that this person is incredibly kind, this person is my mom, makes emotional sense.
This person is my mom, who I want to marry.
Who I want to marry, exactly. I mean, and this is where it gets all, the seed of the problem, or
right.
part of the seed of the problem, And you could even sort of connect it to her unwillingness to marry. It's I am not wife. I'm absolutely not wife. I'm daughter.
I am daughter and husband. Yes, at a stretch. Right. Well, and you'll note she never marries. She adopts a daughter, but she never marries.
Yes.
So she actually she manages, she manages to be mom, though you get this just from the brief afterward, one of the many afterwards that's written by her adopted daughter. You get the sense that she was kind of a high maintenance mom too. Her daughter seems affectionate, but also her mom was kind of a lot.
Yes, as one might expect.
So actually, I want to talk about, because the daughter made me think of this, so the sense of doom that is hanging over all of this, which is the war that is about to come.
Mm-hmm. I think that
the war that is, in fact, actually already ongoing. It's just not immediate, nobody's bombing the home islands yet.
Right. As with anybody whose country is lurching toward disaster, it doesn't happen overnight. It feels like a series of steps as we get closer and closer and closer to, the thing that everybody will point to, in the decades to come as the moment. But But yeah, no, this is one of the reasons that the excision of the not paratextual material in the audiobook is so unforgivable, is that it makes a profoundly important point, which is that the disaster did happen and life in fact went on.
Sort of. Okay, but so here's the thing. First of all, because you really want to pay attention to the dates in her daughter's afterward, because
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, the novel is published in 1954. So this novel, she did all of this colonial imperial travel writing in Taiwan, but she can't.
She lost 20 years of her life.
Yes, but also basically, as soon as Japan is just rebuilt enough that you can start putting out novels, that's it's 9 years after the war is when finally she can actually publish this novel talking about the themes of power and colonialism. She can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
She can't do it during the Empire, and she can't do it during the American occupation, but
Mm-hmm.
she can after that. And then, that's the first date that's worth pointing out. But the thing that really stood out to me is she dies of a lung ailment, of this, of complications from this mysterious lung ailment in the late 60s. And she's from Nagasaki. Is she hibakusha? Is this, or is it just that she was smoking a lot because she was depressed? But, her daughter is probably a war orphan, just based on the dates, or a post-war orphan, and she's from Nagasaki, which it would be, if she was from Hiroshima it would be obvious, but she's from
Right.
Nagasaki, where it's just an open question. Is this an intentional reminder that after all that she did as part of, willing and unwillingly, part of the Japanese imperial machine, she goes home and her hometown gets nuked?
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I do wonder if that's an intentional beat or not, but whether it is or not, it is absolutely present. And, it is also, you know, what I was saying earlier about that void, the between the sort of the rise of the Japanese colonial project and the end of the overt American occupation of Japan. Like, not only do we not get any text from that period, but nobody mentions that period. Nothing is said about that period, even from the folks who are writing after it. It is this like unspeakable void.
Well, and I
But
mean, for a variety of reasons, there's that it was an occupied country. There's also that people are recovering. I mean, the other thing to remember is that in the years leading up to the atomic bombing of Aoyama's hometown is the extremely successful American effort called Operation Starvation, where everyone on the home islands is literally dying of starvation. Meanwhile, weirdly, Taiwan is actually doing okay comparatively, because for a variety of reasons, including just that they couldn't by the end, their supply lines were cut off, and so Taiwan couldn't be a source of food for the home islands anymore.
and it is also of interest that Chizuru ends up in America.
Yes.
With her
Ends up in
Japanese
America
husband.
with her. Is he Japanese? I thought he was Taiwanese Japanese. Or I thought he was Taiwanese, but we're living and working in Japan.
Yes, yes.
Which incidentally, was that willing, or was he part of the large amount of Taiwanese and Korean imported labor?
He had a more high status position, I think. Like, he was a member of an important family, so probably not in the same way.
Probably he was. Yeah, he was
But-
not like imported conscript or farm labor. But that still doesn't 100% mean that it. This is not a free moving society.
But it is very interesting, just sort of as a gloss on, like, we don't know when they left. We don't know under what circumstances they left.
Right?
But
Did they get out before or after? Did they go back to Taiwan before or after the war? The World War II really heats up. before the America-Japanese part of World War II. And did they get back to, were they in Taiwan? Were they in Japan then? Were they in Taiwan then? Were they in the U.S. then? I'm inclined to think that they must have gone back to Taiwan at some point because she's using a Mandarin name in the U.S. And if they'd gone straight from Japan to, America, I feel like they'd be less inclined to be using Wade Giles for their name.
So, this is all ambiguous, of course, but it also, opens up another way in which, like, the lived experience of tragedy and brutality that Aoyama and Chizuru have experienced, again, sort of meets up and cross paths as they are both become people who've lived through wars. But it seems as though Chizuru might have done so in a way that is less personally damaging.
Maybe.
Maybe. And we don't know.
We don't know. And among other things, also, she would have been Taiwanese, depending on when they went back, if they went back to Taiwan, she would have been Taiwanese at the end of the Chinese Civil War. And that was not a great time, 1950 was not a great time to be Taiwanese.
Mm-hmm. But I think that sort of that ambiguity is on purpose. And like the way that it opens up this, like, it's very important that because the main narrative, the travelogue itself, takes place in this, single year sort of pre-graduation, because we end with the sakura flowers, right? This is our golden high school years in a certain sense. Before being graduated out into the world, which is on fire. It is very important that we are reminded that that this massive external block of continuing both global and personal history exists, and sort of this series of accidents that leads us to having this text in our hands, and the series of accidents that ends up with us having this text in our hands, in addition to like the serious efforts of a few very dedicated people, which I just think is a nice and realistic touch.
Yeah, that this was almost a lost text, and then we get. I love that it has to first be self-published. That the Han Chinese translation has to be self-published, and also that it has to be self-published with a bunch of redactions. Even though it's after the lifting of martial law, it's still not entirely a safe time to be publishing something that's so complicated about the Japanese colonial period. When the self-published version is ostensibly self-published, it has to have all these redactions, and so it's only now the new Mandarin edition in what is it, 2020 in 2020, like long after we've had Li Denghui and Chen Shui-bian and Tsai Ing-wen, all Taiwanese elected presidents. Now we can have the real version.
And I got the impression that some of the redacted stuff may also have been about how lesbian it all is,
yes,
as well as the political stuff.
Yes, but I think that some of the political stuff is also there, right? I mean, also this is being published in a post-marriage equality Taiwan.
Yes.
So I will say. I loved the way that all the names are and also the English translator's choice for which things to, because the English translator actually had to choose which things to Romanize in Taiwanese and which things to Romanize in Wade Giles and which things to Romanize in Hanyu Pinyin. And each of those is, sometimes that you're supposed to be doing it in Taiwanese, but which Romanization system you use is this incredibly complicated, fraught series of choices. And, I thought that the translator, Lin King, did a good job, but also it's really interesting because, among other things, it makes me think about how, which are the names here that I recognize?
Notes, which end up sort of bleeding into personal reflections. If we're doing small notes here, I it really enjoyed the way that in multiple places Aoyama says this is like a scene from a kabuki play, or it's like a scene from a shoujo novel,
Mm-hmm.
when the immediate thought is this is from anime. Um, when she's talking about like the god stories, and about the scene with the, beneath the falling petals in the girls' school,
Mm-hmm.
between the two girls, and I'm like, that's, you're fudging this slightly, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that what you mean is clear to the modern audience.
No,
I
I
mean,
mean the thing is that
I know that those things existed,
like
and
the
I
thing
know
is
that
that
there's
those
a
things existed, and I'm actually I've got a book out for peer review that talks about this. There's like a lot of these tropes that you recognize from manga and anime. They did exist in novels at the time. This is actually reasonably historically accurate.
yes.
It's and it is reasonably historically accurate for Aoyama to be reacting this way, especially because she is a popular novelist.
Mhm.
So
I'm absolutely not denying that. I just, from a modern reader's perspective, it's very funny, and and presumably also will come across that way to a contemporary reader of this.
yeah, that's fair. The contemporary reader is going to be absolutely picturing the shoujo manga panels, or like the anime the cells.
Yes.
The,
Uh,
I have a note, which is Aoyama, you are Jai is actually a really nice town, and I don't know why you were dumping on it.
I I feel like the English translator was tiptoeing right up to making gay jokes about the dish gay. Um, and I would like to appreciate the restraint for not, tipping firmly over into that. But, um, there was a lot of repetition of the word, um, in slightly questionable circumstances, which I enjoyed. Uh, we haven't sort of discussed the theming of the chapters around various dishes.
Oh yeah, some of which
Which
are Taiwanese, and some of which are Japanese.
mhm. You mentioned when you were describing this book to me that it reminded you of Kitchen.
Yes,
Um,
I think I did say what if kitchen, but imperialism
and
and gay.
that's Kitchen by Yoshimoto Banana. I loved it when I read it like 20 years ago. It was one of my first experiences with learning to love a narrative where nothing much happens, developing the patience for poetry and prose. I'm kind of scared to revisit it, but we're going to do it anyway soon. And gay, yes. Uh, this sort of made me think about, Kitchen in a slightly different light, because one of the things that as you say, there's like Taiwanese dishes and Japanese dishes, and the content of the chapter is sort of poetically described in some cases by the socioeconomic or historical context of the food that is
Mm-hmm.
being discussed, and the thinking and sort of rereading Kitchen, which is sort of about the mystical qualities of katsudon, uh, with the knowledge that katsudon was an imperial project,
Right?
that it was a dish that was like deliberately invented by the Japanese government in an attempt to make its soldiers larger, uh, is it really puts an all spin on that book retrospectively, um, which I
Yeah.
thought, maybe maybe worth revisiting Kitchen with that like living in the back of my
I
mind.
know, right? Yeah,
um,
no, this also made me want to reread Kitchen in this context.
mhm.
Um, the Oh, I also want to talk about. So when I was first reading this book, I noticed that the or the dedication was to one half of the twins, or not the twins, of the sisters who are Yang Shuangzi. Um,
Yes.
and I was like, why only one of them? And it turns out that the reason is that the other one is dead. And I thought that it's really interesting to read the Yang Shuangzi afterward note, that's called Amber, incidentally, because it is written as though they really did discover this novel. This Japanese novel that they found in, they found in the museum. Manuscript is in the museum collections of the Museum of Taiwan Literature, and then it ends with special thanks to her dead sister, and that's just what a fascinating choice to weave together the fiction and what must be some like real emotion.
Right, particularly because like the idea of having like a dead twin sister who died tragically young.
I don't actually think they're twins. I can't remember, but definitely sisters.
English Wikipedia says twin sister, and also says that the twin in question was more interested in translation, while the author of this text is more interested in literature. Hard to tell where the fiction begins and ends here. And you're an author of lesbian fiction, and like you are dealing with these tropes, and it is sort of an extraordinary thing, because when you first read this, because you're like tuned to see, okay, how much of this is metafiction and how much of this is true, and nearly all of it is metafiction, but her dead sister is true. It's a really interesting thing to do to have presented it as part of this.
Yes. Also, I will note, I don't actually have the characters, so I don't know for sure if it's if this is a pun or if this is just what the characters are. But Shuangzi means two kids, means pair of kids. So
yeah.
It's one author. And the other sister, apparently, they were sort of a writing duo where one of them would write and the other one would do the research. But it's one author, but her pen name is specifically, the Yang twins, basically.
Yeah, no, I feel like that there is a mythology here that I am not going to be able to fully grasp.
In fact, having pulled it up, it is in fact the Shuang. It is in fact Shuangzi, like pair of kids.
Yeah. Just like,
or just
wow.
pair, or you could also just call it like the Yang twins or the Yang duo but that's her pen name.
Right, and the temptation to like somehow read that into this text as if it were another like fictional element of the proceedings is so strong.
Right.
Which I guess is part of the point, is that this is a piece of fiction that is also in like layered in other pieces of fiction, but it is all about something which is extremely real.
Yes, and I think that this is part of why this, qualifies for a speculative fiction book podcast. I mean, not that we need to, because it's our podcast and we can do whatever we want, but specifically the ways in which it is trying to blend reality and narrative. I think these are techniques that we also see in very good science fiction. And
yes.
And in good speculative fiction in general, and I thought that it's particularly well done here. So, other than the fact that this is also in conversation with a lot of the themes that we explore in the podcast, I think technique-wise, it's very much in conversation with the kind of books that we like to review for the podcast.
There's also this thing that keeps happening with speculative fiction where somebody will do a bit of speculative fiction that like is just a prolonged love letter to a metafictional person in the literary fiction universe, and everybody will be like, oh my god, this is so groundbreaking, nobody's ever done this before.
Right.
And vice versa.
Right.
Like some literary fiction person will sprinkle in some magical realism tropes, and everybody will be like, whoa, this is so groundbreaking. And it's just like, please read lots of things.
Right.
to broaden your palate.
Right.
Eat the whole feast. And having eaten the whole feast, you can produce leftover stew.
Yes.
Which is the important thing. That I was very pleased to learn about leftover stew, because on an occasion where I've been to a Thanksgiving dinner that neared the complexity of a banquet, that a rich friend of mine's family used to do. They at the very end of the whole proceedings, they would make leftover sandwiches, which were without question the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And having just eaten an entire enormous multi-course Thanksgiving dinner, I would eat multiple leftover sandwiches because they were just so good. The height of decadence and the, dating from an era where I still had an absolutely unlimited stomach capacity, which I'm sure you remember.
I do, yes.
I did feel for our giant cedar here in a number of different ways. Chizuko's nickname in school was Giant Cedar because she was large and dense.
Right. I mean, the thing is that for one thing, she knows that she's stupid. Like that,
Yes.
she's actually quite endearing, despite the fact that she is stupid and self-absorbed. And I mean, you do get to that. I get to one of the afterwards where Ong Chien Ho talks about the one time that Aoyama is sick and just keeps demanding like dish after dish after dish, and she keeps being like, and so then I made a fifth bowl of a different kind of noodles, and that she's recounting this, and then that Aoyama's daughter is like, oh, so you really did kind of have a thing for her, didn't you? That this was sort of like all the layers of sort of put upon, she's hiding that she's feeling put upon, but also she's feeling put upon to hide how she's feeling.
Yes.
It was really nice, but it also does sort of drive home how incredibly demanding and bratty Aoyama could be. But she's likable nonetheless, and part of that is because she understands that she's missing something. She understands that she's being stupid. She's trying to understand. Her heart is in the right place. She's just really not getting it. And also, it's very relatable how hungry she is and how much she just wants to eat all the delicious food around her.
Yes. The sort of the metatext for this podcast is that I'm of the gourmand tendency, or was when I was younger. I'm now in the winter of my years, depressed, looking back and lost my appetite moment for now. I'm sure the next year I'll be eating everything again. Who knows?
Well, go to Taiwan, apparently.
I'll go to Taiwan, apparently. Christ. I mean, it's the one thing that appears not to be up for grabs in the world at this point. So, but regardless, as a fan of travel writing, food writing, sort of Daniel Pinkwater and various other sort of Jewish Yiddish writers esque, writing about the world through the lens of gluttony, writing, some of which is some of the most of the stuff that is the dearest to my heart in ways that I can't justify. I did really enjoy reading this book on the level of let's make you think about that.
Yeah.
If you want more of an insight into how I got this way, then you really need hunt up the essay collection Chicago Days, Hoboken Nights by Daniel Pinkwater. And again, it's not going back to what we were first talking about. It's not trying to make me, regret being that. It's trying to make me think about what being that means and how that actually works out in the world, and also how that works out in terms of what one's dreams and expectations are, and whether, if one envisions the happiest possible life as a life in which people are waiting on you all the time and giving you delicious food, maybe you should
right.
consider the consequences and cultural context of that.
Yeah. Well, at the same time,
as a white person living in the international district or what have you.
Yes, I, of course. At the same time, one can definitely see the appeal of just getting to be babied and fed all the most delicious foods that you want. You can understand why this is tempting to our narrator, even as you also understand why it is unsustainable on an individual and ethical and global level.
Well, Taiwan is still Taiwaning.
It is still Taiwaning in its own way. And I mean, this definitely gave me complicated feelings about how much I love and miss being in Taiwan. But also, you know what? Taiwan is actually a pretty cool place. Um,
If you
so,
come away with nothing else from this episode, visit Taiwan.
right. This episode not actually sponsored by the Taiwan Tourism Bureau, but if you're offering,
Yeah, absolutely. Eat some basopeng.
Yeah.
It's gonna, it'll have a katsudon-esque effect on you.
I know, like the other thing is the whole thing with like with the baso with the luro fan, like
Hmm.
that was my that was my starving student 11:30 p.m. It was too hot to eat dinner and or I was too stressed to eat dinner. I would just go out and get a bowl of that like 5 nights a week. So, it's and so thinking about, okay, well, what is and I think of it as such a quintessentially Taiwanese dish, but thinking about, okay, but what is the actual history of this food and the ways in which, it gets mixed up with a very similar dish and um, was, interesting and useful. I do.
Absolutely. Worthy of further study. I would like to eat a lot of both of them in
Uh,
order to better understand the metaphor.
and and part of why it was my starving student food, right, is that it was really cheap, even by Taiwanese food standards. Like I could go get a bowl for like $1, and that was cheap. And again, that is cheap in Taiwan as well. But also, that's definitely built on layers of class that existed in Taiwan at the time, where you could get extremely expensive, fancy Chinese and Taiwanese and Japanese food that costs as much or more than a nice restaurant here, or you could spend $1 and get your little bowl of luro fan.
Yes.
Also, I do want to say, speaking of conversations with the podcast, one of the things that a lot of these books we read is they sort of is queer desire revolutionary, and I like that this one comes pretty firmly down on no. That especially in the context of the recent post I saw on Tumblr noting that Yukio Mishima is in the Rainbow Walk of Fame.
I mean, he was a queer author of color,
Yeah,
as people keep pointing out.
he is a queer author of color who wrote on political themes, and
He
who was
did.
tragically killed by a Japanese right wing nationalist.
Also true. Much in the same way that, you have to give Hitler his props. He did kill Hitler.
But it's just but that's the thing, right? As this is a story, this is a book about a queer woman of color, a queer woman of color who's an abuse survivor, and
Yes.
and yet
And yet.
and one
here
who
she is.
and one who by the afterward by the time of the afterward was also very much the victim of American imperialism. I mean, it's real tragic to know that after she went back from her Taiwan travelogue, after her childhood of deprivation and this year of eating, that there's going to be more starvation in her future. And she's going to survive it, but like she's going to be eating tree bark.
Yeah. Wow.
On that
What a
cheerful
book.
note.
Yeah. What a book, and a lot of things to think about.
And despite it all,
And
this book is fun. I just want to end on that note.
oh yeah, no, this like we've spent the entire episode talking about this heavy stuff, but like the actual content of this book is mostly like going from tourist destination to tourist destination, looking at cool scenery, eating delicious meals, and having fun with your friend who you're in love with.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I didn't
you
even
know.
get to the no mask, the symbolism of the no mask,
Mm.
which this is, well, we can put it in a jingle.
Uh,
Or I can just say
I
it
mean,
now.
we're over time
Okay.
at this point. Might as well just. I mean, let's indulge ourselves. Let's have leftover stew.
Okay, great. So, because I wanted to mention this, is I think the choice of no mask is really great here, because a cool feature of the no mask is that they change expressions depending on whether or not they're facing up or down. So her, Ong Qianho's, no mask, where she's hiding her real feelings, which she usually does whenever Aoyama has said something real stupid. like, that's not a blank face. That's showing emotion, but it's a pre-programmed emotion that can be up or down depending on, how she tilts her head.
Mm-hmm.
Just good metaphor there. I mean, good metaphor there, Aoyama Sensei, the novelist. This also, part of why this book works is that, of course, she's able to bring in all of these great metaphors as she's discussing her disaster lesbian emotions. She's a novelist.
Yeah. And she's stupid smart.
Right, yes, and she's stupid smart.
Great analytical ability, and blinders. And,
So,
again,
we didn't.
who among us?
Yes, I don't think we have time to get into Mishima, the island-born Japanese guy with a giant and justifiable chip on his shoulder, but
No, I'm glad that he's there.
I'm glad that he's there. But it's also, for all that he has this giant chip on his shoulder about, about how, well, actually he likes Taiwan and, everybody looks down on his birthplace and on him for being island-born. But he's still very much part of the colonial project, and he's being kind of huffy with, for somebody who's very much part of the colonial project, he's sure being huffy with Aoyama.
It's like part of the point of the book is that everybody is part of a colonial project
Yep.
in this text.
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't get to actually see the mountain people. We
Yep.
don't go to Wulai and see the Atayal.
Are we done? Well, I'm stuffed, but room for one wafer thin mint. Oh, the one last thing that I wanted to mention is that I think that because it's so brief, like I think it's incredibly funny that speaking of the masks in its various modes, that only at one point in the entire book does Chizuru turn on the thing that she learned in the Amber at the Amber Cafe, which is like seductive.
Oh, yeah.
She turns on seductive mode exactly one time, and it just fries up. It's like if you were questioning about like is Aoyama gay or not,
Yeah, just watching her
there's your
completely blue
answer
screen.
in one scene. But it's like, but that never comes up again. It's just sort of it's there to be a data point later.
The thing is, I actually think Aoyama is more aware of her sexuality than she lets on in the narrative. A lot of when she's saying, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, it more reminds me of actually To the Resurrection Station, where our main character goes, oh no, I'm falling in love again. You kind of get the impression that actually she's had some like disaster, even if they're just schoolgirl lesbian relationships in the past. And so she knows what's going on with her, with herself. It's just...
Right. It's just what's possible to put in a text at this time.
Exactly.
In this historical context. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, we do
Yeah,
really
we're
have
super
to wrap
over
it up
time.
now, though.
Read this book,
right.
guys.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Thank you. Shout out to the coworker who recommended this to me.
Till next time.
Bye.
Incidentally, for music that reflects the Taiwanese colonial Jawbreaker while being way more complex than the music of Jawbreaker, I would suggest Collage. I'm not going to cover one of their songs here because it's too hard, but I do recommend checking them out. Also play Nine Souls.